Now that we've seen examples of glimmers of change, let's get to tangible change in our justice system. During Derek Chauvin's murder trial, the defense repeatedly brought up George Floyd's size. His defense attorney said 3 officers were physically incapable of overpowering just one man. But this isn't the first time we've seen victims of police brutality have their bodies used against them in court. Eric Garner, Alton Sterling, Michael Brown, and Tamir Rice are just a few examples of recent cases where this flawed justification for violence was used in court. The same line of reasoning was used when LA police officers beat Rodney King. It's rooted in the history of policing in America. But the problem with policing and unjust treatment of black people, it goes further back than modern history. Policing in the U.S. is directly tied to slavery. In southern states, slave patrols were used to maintain the submission of enslaved people, and they did it through violence and the fear of violence. Slave patrols formally dissolved after the Civil War, but little changed to make the laws more equal. Black codes were passed in 1865. They evolved into Jim Crow laws in the South and continued to find ways to imprison black people to use them for economic gain. It's something historian Khalil Muhammad calls black criminality. In his book, The Condemnation of Blackness, he defines this as the process by which people are assigned the label of criminal, whether they're guilty or not. That process has been a vicious cycle in American history. Muhammad says black people are arrested to prevent them from exercising their rights, then deemed dangerous because of the arrest, and then denied rights even further. So the institution of policing in America is built on stereotypes. But how does that impact trials attempting to hold police accountable? Well, to try and help me answer that is former Assistant Attorney General of New Jersey, Shavar Jeffries. Shavar, first, can you just break down some of the stereotypes that black people face in these cases of police brutality and explain how they tend to be dangerous and deflect from accountability?
Well, thank you so much for the context you just laid out. It really speaks to the history of policing and criminality and the stigmatization of black bodies. People should remember that the entire premise for slavery were that black people were subhuman, right? The United States Supreme Court in the Dred Scott decision made it explicitly clear where it talked about that black people could be reduced to slavery for their benefit, right? So that it was good for black people to be in this type of status because they weren't fully human. And as you laid out, at post-emancipation, those premises continue to play a significant role in a variety of different policy domains, including policing and criminal punishment. So the black codes, they restricted a variety of different activities by black people and largely deemed black people to be presumptively criminal. And we still wrestle with that history today, where for the most mundane, we obviously saw the situation with Daunte Wright, who allegedly had an improper air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror. This presumption that black people are predatory or criminal flows out of a racist and white supremacist foundation that we've had in our cultural underpinnings in this country that have presupposed black people to be subhuman. And so until we really uproot and dismantle these underlying premises, we're going to continue to have these challenges. So absolutely, we need anti-racist training and education, but we need anti-racist education in our K-12 system, because that's really at the heart of the challenges that we continue to see.
And there are obviously people in high places who agree with you. There is the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act that exists, but does that bill actually have the ability to create real and meaningful change? Does that get at some of the things that you're talking about?
Well, it's a step. It would begin to rethink qualified immunity. It would ban chokeholds. It would ban other types of activities that have been disproportionately visited on black people. People should remember a few things, though. It doesn't do anything in terms of the racist stigma and the racist premises that are really built into the cultural ways in which our country is structured. We really got to rethink K-12 public education to address that issue, and really have to embed anti-racist curriculum into the ways in which we teach young people in this country. The George Floyd Policing Act also doesn't really address the overwhelming majority of police interactions what happen to black folks at the state and local level.
How can people get involved in enacting some of the change you're talking about? Not everyone is meant to be a part of the protest. They're an important piece of changing things, but they're not the entire pie. So what can everyday people sitting at home watching you do to help enact change in their communities?
Most of these issues are the byproduct of decisions and choices made at the local level. And so people can get involved in their local government. They first can get involved in making sure they vote and vote for people who share these kind of anti-racist values. Vote for prosecutors who are going to bring an anti-racist lens to the ways in which they think about prosecution, they think about charging, they think about sentencing. Vote for local mayors and local state legislators to begin to rethink these laws. Again, police and prosecutors, about 80% of their time, according to a research study, is devoted to misdemeanors. We can pass laws to get police out of that type of business and have police focused on what they really ought to be focused on, which are violent crimes and very, very serious property offenses. So people need to get involved. When you have your local mayor, your local city council persons, when those folks are running for those offices, do your research. Evaluate their records, question them on whether or not they have an anti-racist lens when it comes to these issues. And if you're not finding people in your local communities who share your values, that means you got to get up and you have to be the one to run for office to begin to change these dynamics.